such a problem that we have that we all want to talk to each other. It's a wonderful problem to have. Well, I appreciate everybody being here this morning. We've got a lot more of a crowd back today than I've seen in the last few times with the holidays and everything else. We've had ice storms, we've had sicknesses. As you can tell, I'm still getting over a sickness, and so hopefully I'll make it through this class and still talk. But we are all back together again, and so it's really good to see y'all. It's encouraging to me as we continue in 1 John. And so we're going to be in chapter 4 today. We got bumped because of the winter storm for one of our classes. So today, instead of covering chapter 4 in 2 classes, we're going to cover it in 1. And I think the material lends itself to that just fine. So Wednesday we covered verses 10 through 24 of chapter 3. The overhead. Oh, that's not supposed to be blank. There's supposed to be something up there. All right. If any of y'all saw anything up there, then be worried, yeah. All right, well, it'll be coming up in just a moment. In Wednesday, we covered chapter 3 in the last set of verses, 10 through 24. And in those verses, John challenged us about a new standard of love. And what was that standard? What is it he compared love to? What were the 2 types of love that he compared in those verses? You have the love of Christians. I'll give you a hint. In the world, basically. Yeah, you have love that's of the devil and you have love that's of Christ. And as he taught about that, he said, love about Christ was love without qualification. It's a love without quantification. And it's a love of sacrifice. It doesn't consider the value of the target of its love. And that's what Christ did. While we were still yet his, he died for us. Sinners are his enemies, right? He died for us. He died for us while we hated him, and he died for us. And the world doesn't do that. It doesn't do any of those things. It's a love that the world can't understand. It can't quantify, and it can't act on. But we're called to do that. And then he talked about murderers, and he brought up an example. Who is the murderer he brought up? Cain, right. We talked about Cain and how he killed Abel because what was it about Cain that was wrong? His heart. He said his acts were unrighteous and his brothers were righteous and his heart was righteous. And so he says, you gotta watch your heart. You've got to guard your heart. From the outside, Cain was making sacrifices right before he committed murder. And he's saying, you got to be careful about that. You got to be careful. And so it began in the heart. And we talked about murderers that have been in our midst and how we can become murderers, in a sense, by taking on that same heart towards our brethren, which is what John's worrying about. So he told us to have a confident, reassured heart before God. He says, don't let your heart judge you. God knows what's going on in your heart, and you need to get that straightened down. And if you do, then be assured, be happy with where you are with God. So today we're picking up with his last context statement in chapter 3, and that is, whoever keeps his commandments abides in God, and God in him. And by this we know that he abides in us, by the Spirit whom he's given us. And so he's going to launch on this discussion of the Spirit, and he's going to launch that into chapter 4, and then he's going to switch back to love again. Not surprisingly, remember, John is the apostle of love. Yeah, and he discusses it a lot. It's a lot. But there's always differences in everything he discusses at a point. Okay, so that's where we're going to pick up at. And the concept of the Spirit here is where he's going to turn his attention to and then turn back. So we're going to read verses 1 through 6 in a moment. I failed to do this. Can I get a prayer leader for us quickly to go ahead and lead us in a prayer? Daniel, you said yes? Okay, I got you. Go ahead, and if you don't mind, go ahead and lead us in that prayer.
Our dear gracious Heavenly Father, we're again thankful and blessed to be here this morning. It's a privilege to stand before you and to serve you, to learn about your will, and to apply it in our lives and to help others. We pray this morning that as we consider the epistles of John that will grow and learn and change as we need to, that we'll take the lessons that we learn and actually put them into practice in our lives. Please help us to do this at this time. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen. Thank you, Daniel. All right. I need a reader for verses 1 through 6. Buddy, thank you.
Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God. False prophets have gone out into the world.
Okay, so what does verse 1 teach us? We'll just kind of start there and break these down. What does verse 1 teach us? What's the principle?
That you have to test what people are teaching.
Yeah, you can't just accept everything, right? And it's interesting you use that word people. What are the spirits he's referring to here? Are these astrophysical spirits that wander through the earth? No, what does he say? What does he also call them? False prophets, yeah, they're people.
The ways,
I'm sorry?
the teachings are the ways that they're trying to put forward.
Yeah, and their teaching is what they taught, and then the false prophecies and the false teachings that they put forth. It's interesting, he calls them that. And what's the first test that he says to use to see if a teacher is a false teacher or a false spirit? I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry. I could not tell where your voice came from. That was really amazing, Jack. I was like, I can see your lips moving. It's coming over here. Whoever confesses that Christ has come in the flesh, right? And we do remember that what a lot of John is talking about and what he's dealing with in this area, in Ephesus specifically, is Gnostic teachers. And apparently they had a huge run with the church, and they were, causing all these troubles. And one of the things they taught was Jesus didn't actually come in the flesh. There was a man named Jesus in the flesh, but he wasn't the Son of God. The Son of God came down in a spirit of baptism, embodied in his flesh, and then left at crucifixion, and the physical body belonging to Christ died, but that wasn't the Son of God. The spirit was separate, and that's what they taught. So what he's saying is when he says every spirit confesses that Jesus Christ, the Christ, has come in the flesh is from God. In other words, these people don't understand that. Now, obviously, is that the threshold? Anybody who says that, we can believe everything they say? No, we know, and John's not saying that either. What he's saying is, well, what is he saying? When we test the spirits, sometimes what is it that we can see and when we're looking at whether someone's a false teacher or not? That's a big question. I'm not fishing, I'm just asking what you guys think. What is it that you can tell a false teacher by? Their teaching, yeah, of course, yeah.
But you can, there are certain facts and certain things that exist that they're the basis for everything, right? If Christ died, then we have all been almost pitiable, those kind of things. So this is so foundational that anyone who says something contrary to this, it can't be anything more than this.
I love that what you just said, foundational. Sometimes, and most of the time with false teaching, it's the simplest of things. It's not hard to know who's a false teacher, buddy.
Throughout this whole letter, John seems to be inferring a lot about choices. Cain had a choice. Adam and Eve had a choice. We have a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And he's giving the right choice.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But from the beginning, it's all about choice.
Yeah, and it's not, I'm sorry, go ahead, I thought you were in.
Even in John, he tells, Jesus says, you didn't choose me, I chose you. But still, they had to choose to follow him.
They had to decide, yeah.
But it's all about choices.
It is, and we have to make smart choices. We can't just choose whatever we want, which is what John's point is we can't just go and say, well, this is what I'm going to follow. But it is it's like a lot of times it is that foundational or the simplest things that you make a choice to follow Christ, and you use that as the standard then to determine what you're going to do. Christ has to be the standard. And we all know this. I think that everyone here, I feel confident, everyone here could walk into most false teaching places of religion, theological, whatever organizations, could walk in and any of us would sit down in a pew or a chair or whatever they've got, and within seconds of entering the building could feel like something's wrong here. You can see it physically, sometimes you can see it in their organization, you can see the way that they act a lot of times. It doesn't take you all the way through worship to go, oh, wait a minute, there's something really missing here. Now, sometimes that can happen, but the majority of the time, I think what John's pointing out is, if these people don't even confess that Christ came in the flesh, don't listen to anything they say. And I think that's what John's trying to get across. Be very wary of people who in the simplest things get it wrong, and then you look to them for marriage advice. Or you look for them for how to run your life, or how to, whatever it is, some other complicated, more in-depth issue. Be very wary. I'm not saying there's no value, and John's not saying that in other things, but we've got to be wary of what they teach. Because if they don't have the simple things right, what did Christ say? Then you won't get the more complicated ones right. You know, these things have been left to you. Tom?
You know, when we were told to put on the whole armor of God to withstand the things of the devil, all of them except one is defensive. We have to be on the defense for this, that, the other. You can't let your guard down.
You cannot. That's absolutely right. You cannot. So are we saying that there's some sort of litmus test to determine whether someone's a false teacher or not? I think there are some. I think it's pretty easy to see in a lot of cases. Now, like I said, there can be nuance, obviously. You can get people where you're like, well, most of what they teach, but I disagree with this. We're not talking about that where we have like maybe a small issue of disagreement. Does everyone in this room today agree on everything scripturally, that everything that's taught? 100%. No. That does not make us false teachers, though, that. It's a growth process. But there's a difference between someone that and someone who goes out and writes a book or does seminars and says you don't have to be baptized to be saved. Or it doesn't matter if, you know, the women roles in the church, or it doesn't matter for instrumental music. We can look at those things and go, red flag. And that's what John's saying. When you see the red flag, stop listening. Stop considering the things that are deeper that they give you in doing that. Okay, so one thing I'll bring up about this. Oh, did you have a comment, Darryl? Or Jordan?
You're probably going to address this, but like verse 5 there, that's your witness says too, is that they're too much like the world. You know, these generally accepted Christian principles glazed over with, you know, pop culture and things of that nature, and that a lot of people are getting behind. Like, it's not Christianity. It's not at all.
Yep.
There's bits and pieces of it, but, you know, that's your litmus test. Is
Yeah.
how close are they like the world?
Hey.
Because they are from the world, and they speak from the world.
Exactly, yeah.
The world listens.
Yeah, and the world loves it. Yeah, they flock into these places, don't they? Yeah, that's the second test John gives us. He says, not only the first one is the flesh, but he says, you have overcome the world, but he says they are from the world, they speak from the world, and the world listens to them. So what are we to think when we have, and I'm not saying that, you know, this can't happen anywhere, but I'm just saying when you have a group that just gets along with the world amazingly well, they can stack thousands of people into a building and just their membership flows out the doors. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of membership, and you kind of step back a little bit. That has always been my thing. Like, what are they doing there that they can get all these people in there? Generally, it has to do with speaking to the world and doing those things. Macy?
I was just going to say, we just came, coming right out of chapter 3 there, it says, do not be surprised when the world hates you, and that's a litmus test that if you're just going right in with the world where you're just accepted by everybody and you don't hold anything that would ruffle any feathers, then probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what did Paul say? He says or Christ said you're gonna be called in front of leaders and emperors. You're gonna be called in front of kings, and you're gonna be thrown in prison. You're gonna be killed for Christ's sake. And do we see a lot of religious leaders that are kind of the opposite? They get called to the president's mansion to party it up with the president, and then they go across and they see the King of England or the Queen of England or whoever's in charge. Then they go from place to place, and it's like paparazzi, and they're famous. And you kind of got to go, are they preaching the truth of the gospel? Because, Christ must have been very just disabled in preaching the gospel, because he never got that reception. Obviously, we know that's not the case. He taught the truth, and the world doesn't like the truth, generally speaking. So, yeah, be amazed if the world starts to accept you and embrace you and celebrate you. Start being worried maybe about what you're teaching or not teaching.
People get a lot more followers when they tell the people what they want to hear instead of what they need.
Yep. Oh, 100%. This is years and years ago, but I got a card in the mail, a mailer, I think it was before River. They had another name before River Church. It was another one. But anyway, the River Community Church, or whatever it is, that big organization. And before they came to town, I don't know if you guys know this, but those community churches are owned by corporations. They're owned by big companies. That's the reason they come in and throw down a $4 million building and fill it full of, playgrounds and all this. These are not local actions. They're corporations. And well, they sent this card out, said, go to this website and fill out this survey. And so I clicked on it and looked at it, and it said, what do you want from the church? If a church came to town, what would you want? Do you want childcare? Do you want playgrounds? Do you want movie nights? Do you want popcorn celebrations? Do you want this, do this? And then enter in all the other ones you want. So they did a survey of what everybody wanted, and then they spoke to the world, and lo and behold, they've got 1,000 members. It's amazing how they can do that. They're obviously serving the wants and needs of the hearing of the world, and that's exactly what they did. They surveyed, what do you want? And we'll give it to you. And they did it. They were successful at it. But are they from God? No, they're just simply not. And not to be mean or demeaning or anything like that, we have a lot of friends that go to the places like that we think very highly of and we love, but they're wrong. And John says they're from the world. And so whoever knows God listens to us. Who is the us there? I'd say it's the apostles. He's talking about the authority given to teach. He's used that phrase a lot. We knew about Christ and we taught you about Christ, and our joy is complete. Whoever is not from God does not listen to us. Do those places listen to John? Do they listen to Paul? Do they listen to Matthew? They don't. They don't listen to them. They listen to what the people want, and they give them what they want. And so that's basically the approach there. So, and that's by this we know the spirit of truth and the spirit of error. And it's not hard. It's not difficult in that. Any comments on this section before we move on? All right. Now, this next section, we're going to break this down into a little bit smaller sections. Before we do, in verses 7 through 12, I asked you guys to read through these verses. In verses 7 through 12, did you guys spot that there's a phrase that John uses 3 times? He starts off with it here. A phrase he uses 3 times in those verses. And every time he's telling us about something that God's given us concerning love. What is the phrase? It starts off here.
Love one another.
Yeah, he says, beloved, let us love one another. And then he tells you something that God gave you. And then he goes, beloved, or then he just says again, let us love one another. And then he tells you something else God gave. And then he does it a 3rd time, let us love one another. Let me tell you something else God gave us concerning love. So we're going to try to spot those as we go, as John makes this point. Otherwise, it seems really repetitive. We're like, we get it, John. Whoever knows God loves the brethren, right? He says, that's not what I'm saying. You already know that. I taught you that. I'm teaching you more. So let's go ahead and read verses 7 and 8. If I can get a reader for those. All right, Ken, thank you.
Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Anyone who does not love does not know God, because God is love.
Okay. You recognize the song? We know the song. We sing these words that just basically put right into a song. Beautiful words. It's the greatest commands. Is that right? I think that's right, yeah. The greatest commands, which is interesting because this is not a... Anyway, yeah, it's. I think it's the reference is different, but yeah, the greatest command song, we do that. So what is the first thing about love that John tells us? This is a little bit tricky. What's the first thing about love that John tells us that God gave us?
Love is from God.
It's from God. Very, very good. Yeah, I was wondering if I phrased that question well enough to be answered. But love is from God. God is love. Is that the same thing as saying that love is God? Explain that to me. If you say no, then why? Macy?
Because good things can happen in the darkness, basically like what we've been talking about. Like, people can do things in love that's not love, that comes from doing it out of sacrifice because of what Christ did for us and things like that. Kind of like what you've been saying. Good things happen in the darkness.
Yeah, absolutely. And God gave us love, but he didn't just give us the idea of love. He gave us a definition of love. And like Macy's saying, there's all kinds of things that the world calls love, but it's not love. And we can actually prove that scripturally. By God's definition, it's actually not love. And you might say, well, no, but they love that other person. And I'm like, not if they teach them that. Not if they treat them that way. Not if they encourage them to destroy themselves. They might call it love, but it's not love. And God says, the first thing that John says God gave us is he said he gave us Love. He said love is from God, and he gave us the definition of love and being able to do that. Okay, so in that, is the converse true then? Everything that from God is love?
Not necessarily.
Okay, explain to me why. You may be right. I'm just looking for the answers.
God said, vengeance is mine. I will repay, said the Lord. At the proper time, there's going to be something coming from God on those who disobey him, which is vengeance.
Okay, I can see that context. You would say that vengeance is not necessarily just love, pure love in that sense. But does God's love ever fail even in vengeance? See, I would still arc it over that, but I see what you're saying. Yeah, I have to be more specific in my questions. Yes, Sam?
They kind of go along with kind of like, not everything he does is love, but then out of love. Like, if you look in, Numbers, with Korah and all that.
Mhm.
He killed Korah not because he loved them, he loved the Israelites, who he's trying to keep them away from, because they're trying to take them away from him.
Yeah, his actions never lack love, even in punishment, even in vengeance, even with Korah. I would say that that was absolutely true, because he was still showing love. In love and grace, like we've talked about, what was it that God would do if he didn't show love? We wouldn't be here. If he didn't show grace, we wouldn't be here. None of us would. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am?
That is actually the point I was going to head toward, but I will go ahead and say that love is not just this warm, lovely, fluffy, beautiful, comfortable thing.
Right.
Sometimes it comes in the form of, I love you enough for this discipline, or
That is so true, and the world doesn't get that right now. They've redefined love as love. You've heard that phrase, love is love. What does that mean? It means absolutely nothing. There's no value in that statement. Anything that you call love is then love. Well, we know that that's not true. Now, we can say something that we love someone, but if we don't treat them in the love that God has taught us, then we're not loving them. Yes, Tom?
And the love here has to do with agape, the service type love. God gave us a service in that we walked away, we left him, dead in sins. He still sent Jesus to get us back.
That is love.
That is service.
That's right. Service
He
and
didn't
love.
just say, I love you, he proved it.
He proved it. That's right. Is that right?
Going back to something Macy said, I think it was Wednesday, about John 15 and this being a mirror. Well, we just have to be in the same spot in our reading. We were reading 13, but 13 through 17. If you want to expound on love, go to those chapters. And, I mean, even go back to chapter 3. Where
Yeah.
God sent his son. 13 through 17 is, I mean,
Yeah. There's more about love than the word. Yeah, I agree. There's so much to learn, and that's what John's getting at here. Okay, well, let's move on to verses 9 through 11. Then another reader for me. Appreciate that, John. Thank you.
In this, the love of God was made manifest among us. God sent his only Son into the world so that we might live through him. And this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his Son to be a propitiation for our sins. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another.
Okay, so what's the second thing about love that God gave us?
His Son.
He gave us his Son. He said he loved us so much that I was manifesting it by sending his Son into the world. And then he goes through and describes that sacrifice and the love that he showed. But at the very end, verse 11, what does he say? What is our repetitious verse?
You ought to love one another.
Yeah, he says, God so loved us that we ought to love one another. He comes back to that point again, and that's why we should love one another as well in that. Okay, any comments on that? That one's pretty straightforward, but Danny, go ahead.
I will say, it's interesting kind of the subjects that come up in chapter 4 through here, just how much it's about love and then spirits and things that you could take those and kind of separate them, pretty far apart. He's in a person that's really tight. It makes me think like he's almost big picture kind of saying, there's two issues. Yeah, they're wrong.
Yeah.
But there's also fighting going on. Like there's two things that we need to come back here and
Yeah, I've never been able to put my finger on it, but that's always been the heartbeat of this book to me, is like he's dealing with, there is some conflict, and he's really trying to get across that concept. I mean, he did it through his gospel too, like, Buddy pointed out, it's all over. And it's like, why the focus on that? Well, the church has been around for 15 years. It's time to build up some really good grudges and some conflicts, and then really noodle those and work them, right? And hold them in our hearts. And maybe John, as an elder in Ephesus, knew that. He looked around and said, we need to talk about love, folks, and that's a warning for us as well. Sometimes marriages get better through time, and sometimes they just grow in the pains that they've developed over time. The marriage of Christ and the church, and then the church with each other and our brethren, sometimes we can get better and stronger over time, which is what God intends, but sometimes things just go down a path where grains of salt or grains of sand become irritants and they become issues. And we need to clean those out. So that's a really good point. All right, 12 through 16, another reader, please. Jordan, thank you.
No one has ever seen God. We love one another, God abides in us. His love is perfected in us. By this we know that we abide in him, and he in us, because he has given us of his Spirit. And we have seen and testified that the Father has sent his Son to be the Savior of the world. Whoever confesses that Jesus is the Son of God, God abides in him, and he in God. So we have to come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love. And whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him.
Okay, so what's the third thing that John says that God gave us through love, or to help in love?
Going with his Spirit.
His Spirit? Okay, yeah, what does he say? He goes, if we love one another, there's that phrase again, if we love one another, then what happens? God abides in us. That's the third thing that he talks about. He says, you need to understand that God abides in you if you love one another. So, and what are your thoughts on this? Because, in these verses, he kind of talks about that in two different ways. One, he abides in us, and then he kind of equates that with this idea that it's perfected in us. There's perfection that's achieved through that abiding. So what is your thought on that? Why is this the crowning part of love? Why is John bringing this all together here to say this is where perfection is held?
Well, God's love has always been perfect. And in the three, first he goes ahead and says, I've given you love, I've defined love, now it's made perfect and complete in you. I've shown you how to love, now you love one another the same way, and it's complete now.
Yes, it is complete, it abides in you. What did he start this section by saying? What's the off phrase that we just read over that I think we may have?
Never seen God.
No one has ever seen God. You're like, why did you say that, John? I don't know. I'm going to go by it and start talking about love, right? He said that for a reason. Why did he say that? Why did he say that? He abides in us and his love is perfected in us. But he started off by saying no one has ever seen God. Go ahead, just whoever.
Well, if it's perfected in us and we show God's love, we see God in each other.
Yeah, it helps in each other.
We see his love in each other.
There's a strength in each other, but where else does it go?
We're a direct representation to the world of the only way they'll be able to see God through
Yes.
us, because he abides in us.
We are the world's Bible, right? Absolutely. Buddy, and then Rodney.
When you asked a question about perfection, and I was going to just.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
To what Rich said, when you choose life, when you confess your sins, when you love one another, when you obey God's commandments, love the Father, believe in Jesus, abide in the truth, the choices that he gave us throughout the chapter,
Yep.
when you choose those, it's perfect.
Then it's perfect. Exactly right. Great point, buddy. Good point.
I was just gonna look in that with the first letter where it just says, here it says, no one's seen God, and then he says, if you don't love your brother who you have seen, you can't love God who you haven't seen.
Yep.
So there's that kind of there's several things in between it that others have pointed out.
So are you saying, again, we've said this before, but are you saying that there's a litmus test for Christians to know whether God abides in us? What's that litmus test? At least one of them. We got to love one another. It's not an option. It's not an elective. This is a requirement for Christianity. We've got to love one another, folks. And if we're not, we're breaking down the purpose of us being a church, of being his body, of being being our brethren, our brothers and our sisters. They depend on that love. And if we break that down, we're not perfect and we're not complete, and he doesn't abide in us. That's his focus and purpose in us to do that. Okay? Other comments? Tom?
We can, quote, see God by the evidences he puts forth by showing his love.
Yep. That is how we shine that light, right? And what if we don't? What does the world see? What if the world sees conflict or disconnect or bickering, segmentation, broken? Yes, ma'am.
It's viewed as hypocrisy.
Yeah, it is. It's an excuse, isn't it? I don't know how many people I've had. I mean, I know that you all have heard this too. Well, I don't want to go to church because it's full of hypocrites. Well, then you don't want to go to hell. You know, it's like, folks, this is where we fix these things. Get here and help be part of the solution. And am I saying that everybody in the church is perfect? No. But is everyone in the church, can we be perfected by abiding with God abiding in us? Yes, and we can shine that light, and that's part of our job here. We can't overstate that. I think that that's important, and John makes that point here. Okay, other comments on these? All right. And then verses 17 and 18, Jeff? Oh, sorry, we had another comment. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
As I've been listening to this, I'm thinking, man, this would make a fantastic 3-point sermon. And a lot of sermons, I think it helps them to sit well with us if we've got application. And so as we're going through this, when we talk about loving one another, that could be a whole nother however long class to talk about the nitty-gritty of what does it look like to love one another.
Yep.
Because it can be done in a million different ways. And on the contrary, the things that don't feel like loving one another, we could talk about the things that can be off-putting or hurtful or look like hypocrisy. So that's another whole conversation we could have about that application. What does that look like?
100%. And that's the litmus test that John, I think, is giving us, is he's saying, guys, you can sit in the pews, you can attend every service, you can do every Bible study, you can teach, you can preach, you can be deacons, you can be elders, you can be whatever you want to be in the church. But if this part is missing, and your love of your brethren is missing, he doesn't abide in you. And can you hide that part? To some extent, you can hide it. You can bury it deep. Maybe you just don't, I just don't care for that brother or sister enough. Or I just like I like my 2 brothers and sisters that I like. And those are the ones I'm going to be around. And so I just, I take care of them, and that's my love for the brethren. Is that what John said? He didn't. No, he broadened it out, didn't he? And remember we talked about our checklist. Is there a checklist out there that, we can keep track of to say, if words don't count, how many times would my brethren know that they're loved by me? And I'm talking to myself, it's a difficult thing that John puts us in front of. It's a high standard for us to achieve, but we need to try. We need to try to achieve it. Okay, other comments on that? All right, so that brings us to verse 17 and 18, and another reader. All right, Jeff, thank you.
This is love with us, so that we may have confidence for the day of judgment. Because as he is, so also we are in this world. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. Fear has to do with punishment. Whoever fears has not been perfected in love.
Okay, so what's the next thing that God gives us through love that he achieves in us? What does it do? Confidence, which is the result of casting out fear, right? He says you cast out fear, so it gives you confidence and assurance in the day. And so he says you have that ability, you have confidence, and you have that. And that's what it says here. I want to jump tracks for just a second, because this kind of runs into another study that we had at the young folks at our house, and I wanted to kind of jump tracks here to talk about that and what we talked about there, because it fits so well in with this. So I want to do is go to 2 Timothy 3 as we cover this, because I think 2 Timothy takes this whole picture And he explodes it out, and he really does a great job of explaining it. So I'm going to let Timothy explain it, and then we'll kind of work from there. One more reader here as we go through these verses. Rich, thank you.
But understand this, that in the last days there will come times of difficulty, for people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, having the appearance of godliness, but denying its power. Avoid such people.
Okay, so when we read these verses, hopefully with what John's talking about in chapter 4, it just feels like it's like another overlay of the same discussion, isn't it? Watch out, test the spirits, be careful of these people, all of these. And he starts off with the idea, but understand this, and some translations I think are a little bit better. It's the idea of, hear this, watch out. It's another action word of be aware of what I'm going to tell you. This is important. But how does he end? What's the last sentence in verse 5?
Have the appearance of godliness.
Yeah, he does. They have the appearance of godliness, deny its power, and what does he say at the very last? And because of that, avoid such people. So Paul here is telling us that he says there are people like this out in the world, and you need to avoid them. You need to avoid them and be aware of them like that. And he says, because God and Paul and John are all concerned about the influences around us. And several of these items deal with love. And that's where I wanted to kind of tie this in. I thought it was really neat. What are the two loves that he talks about in verse 2? We've been talking about world love. What are the two loves that he mentions in verse 2? Yeah, he says lovers of self and they're lovers of money. And what are the two loves in verse 4? One of them is a little bit harder, but you'll see it.
Pleasure.
Lovers of pleasure. And they are everything except loving God, right? Yeah, it's the second one is everything except loving of God. People who aren't doing God's will won't necessarily be people without love around them, right? They have love around them. Does the world seem satisfied with its love a lot of times? You look on TV, you watch YouTube or whatever it is now that everybody watches, but you watch these different things, you see these people, and they're so happy in their love. And we see that and we go, okay, well, they have love. Yeah, they have love of pleasure, love of money, love of self, everything except love of God. And they pile those things up, and then that's what we're told. Young people are told the best thing you can do is love yourself. That is a big statement. Ever since Whitney Houston taught us back in the 80s, and we've carried it all the way through now, love yourself is the most important thing you can do. Is that true by biblical standard? Not in the way that they're talking about it, right? I mean, we do have the concept that we have to know how to love ourselves in reflection of Christ, and then we can love others, but not just love ourselves as that. So here's the point. These people aren't necessarily presenting themselves as haters, and as we look at this, we look at verse 5, and as was already pointed out, what does it say? It says they hold to a form of godliness, but they deny its power. That word form is like it's a morphosis. It's like you took godliness and you twisted it a little bit to change it. But it still looks kind of the same, but it's not. The function and the purpose is different. And he says it's not the actual thing. It's not the power that's there. Sometimes people will look like actual godly people, but it's fake. And it's a sham, and that's what Paul is talking about here to some extent. Some people will go to church their whole lives and do churchy things and all of these things and profess all these things, but in the truth, they're only loving who? Themselves. They love pleasure, they love money, they love themselves and everything that is not of God. Because what does God say about ourselves? What should we do? Deny ourselves. And that's what God teaches us. They deny the power of God because they deny that function in their life. Tom, go ahead.
One reason why that is so important to us is because those who are so hypocritical and show a righteous life in front of people, but are not, the closer the lie is to the truth, the harder it is to detect.
Satan is good. Satan is good. He's making false teaching closer and closer and closer to the truth as he can get it without it being there. And that's that morphosis. That's that form of godliness. Satan is good at that. He's really good at that. All right, so they deny the power of God. Going back to 2 Timothy chapter 1, he made a statement there that Paul did. He says, "For God gave us a spirit, not of fear." Remember what John just talked about? We are not given a power of fear. We're not given a spirit of fear. We're given a spirit of, and he says, and Paul agrees, not a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. The opposite of fear in these things is power, love, and self-control. And that's what God gives us. Lest we think that somehow us not having, a love of self is somehow destructive to us. It's the opposite. It's empowering. And he goes on to say that. He says that's the things that he gave us. We don't have that. What are people when they are lovers of money, lovers of self, lovers of power, lovers of everything but God? What are they often operating out of? The world, fear. And you can see that if you start watching when these worlds break down and the things of the world start failing them, their health fails them, the people around them fail them, the money fails them, the fame fails them, whatever it is that they've done. We have a lot of scandal being released in the news right now, and all these very big names in our world, many of which I don't know before this, are now tumbling down. Do you think they fear that? Where is all their worth? Where is all their value? It's all in that. And it's being stripped away because the world fails you. They failed themselves, but they also failed that. And here it collides with John's point. When you deny the power that's in the love of God and the relationship with God, it tends toward these other things. It tends towards these other worlds and that. Okay, so look at verse 2 again. Look at verse 2. For people will be lovers of self, lovers of money, and then there's this list of things that happens, right? We look at that list. Proud, arrogant, abusive, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, heartless, unappeasable, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not loving good, treacherous, reckless, swollen with conceit. Then it comes back to, and that. Take a looking at that. I want you, by a show of hands, how many of you have ever known anyone that fits any of these categories? If not, you are living a blessed life. What Paul's point is the world's full of these people, right? The world's full of these people. Now a harder question. How many people here have ever seen yourself in any of these words? That's what we have to recognize, right? We have to recognize is that makes this this text very scary in a sense, is we're supposed to avoid these people. Macy?
I've been thinking that, like in my own life, the way that I feel like it can hit home for all of us is that, having the appearance of godliness but denying its power. I've been so guilty of that before, to bring things before God in prayer, but never fully let go of the fear, feeling like I have to continue to, micromanage and control it, but not actually trusting that He's the only one that can help it,
He's the only one, yeah. And, and as Paul tells us about this, it should scare us a little bit because we can look at that list and say, that's how I was. But we can also look at that list sometimes and go, I don't know if I've gotten rid of that one. I don't know if I've changed that one. I don't know if I'm God's abiding in me right now because I'm pushing Him out of this part of my life that I've got carved out. I've got this little stone, and I'm going to hold on to it, and I'm going to tell Him, not here, Lord, not here. That one, I need to keep that one down. And so what ends up building in us? Hopefully some fear. But that's not the power God gave you. That's the power sin gives you. That's the power Satan gives you. He operates out of fear. God gives you that ability to have this power of love and self-control and have confidence and have reassurance. And that's what John talks about. And when we look at this list and we do that, we can say, I can't avoid myself, right? Hopefully you can't. If you can, you may want to talk to someone about that. Talk to Daniel. He's a professional. But you can't avoid yourself, right? But what can you do? What can you allow God to do? Change you. Make it different. Make it something better. Make it something that doesn't operate out of fear anymore. Don't give in to that, and don't do that. And that's basically what John's telling us here. In the last 3 verses, and we love because He first loved us. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For he who does not love his brother whom he has seen, he cannot love God whom he has not seen. And this commandment we have from Him, whoever loves God must also love his brother. John ties it up and puts a bow on it and lets you know, don't try to fool yourself into thinking you can skip this. You cannot. All right, thank you guys so much for all your comments. We'll continue in chapter 5, and I'll put those verses out next week.